How's it go, everyone? Wayne the Unknown here, and welcome to Cosplay Con Talk, where we basically discuss everything pertaining to the cosplay community and conventions. In this episode, we are going to be doing another podcast panel, and this segment will be called Cosplay Veterans. I'm joined here by Brian and Diz, also known as Freed Creations. Again, Brian and Diz, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, no
Happy
problem.
to be here.
Starting with you, Diz, how long have you been cosplaying for?
I've been cosplaying sort of officially since 2005, so that's 17,
Yeah,
a little bit more maybe. I'm
seven,
not
yeah,
sure.
17, yeah, 17 years now.
Yeah,
Because yeah, in 3 more years, you'll have been cosplaying for a total of 15 years
20.
or 20. My bad. Right, 20.
Math
Math.
is hard.
Math
Yeah.
is we don't need math.
Numbers bad. Yeah. No, actually, when you get my age, dude, that is the case. You know. Yeah.
You just stop counting after a while.
Oh, you have no idea.
And since
Yeah.
Brian's wearing the hat, I might as well bring in
Oh yeah.
Hey, there you go. Yeah.
the hat that's now a thing.
I feel like I need to go get a hat now too.
the hat that's the hat's a thing for this channel now.
I can go get a helmet. I have a
and
whole bunch of those. Yeah.
and you, Brian, how long have you been cosplaying for?
Well, officially, first con was in '89, out in public wearing something, and it was a really low rent Batman that was basically chicken wire with paper mache and a like off the shelf cape. I think I spray painted the bat symbol on a gray thermal shirt. Well, actually, I spray painted the shirt gray and then did the black symbol on it. So, because that was the year the Batman had hit the theaters, but I was already a comic fan.
Oh
and
yeah,
stuff.
the Michael Keaton.
Yeah, yep. So there was
I
no
mean-
way that even at that age I could have made a suit like that. I can now, but back then, no way. So it was just like, okay, we're gonna go with a mix of the old rights and stuff, and then the TV series. So that's the way I went, and yeah, it was fun. Everybody loved it, you know, because it wasn't a thing. You know, it wasn't
Cat in
really
the
a big thing
background.
there at the time. Yeah.
Cat bomb.
Yeah.
So how old were you, Diz, when you started cosplaying back in 2005?
That was like I was in 7th grade, I think. So it was what, like 14, somewhere in there.
And
Yeah.
nice. How about you, Brian? How old were you when you started cosplaying back in
It would-
'89?
15.
So like a standard age for a lot of
Yeah, roughly.
that
Yep.
I've come to notice over the years that seems to be the standard age for anyone to get into cosplay. I mean, nowadays you see like little like parents dressed in their 1-month-year-old as Zelda
Yeah.
or Mario, and
Yeah, see, now that's their parents doing that, but the kids themselves taking an active interest. You're right. I've noticed it too, that it is early to mid-teens because, you know, you're coming in your own whatever direction. And now that you see
Mhm.
everybody else that does it, by all means, I'm going to do it.
your kid's like, I want to be
Kidding.
part of this. I wanna be-"
It's all right.
And I guess
Hi.
for me, I'm not really a cosplay veteran, but I've known about cosplay and con since 2009. So roughly, I've known about this stuff for like 13 years.
Yeah.
Well, even just as an outside observer, if you're not actively cosplaying every time since you've known it, I mean, you can just see the progression sometimes day to day. I mean, week to week,
Mhm.
it's been insane. So you can imagine, you know, my case, decade after decade,
I
you know, it's been insane.
remember.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I remember back in 2009, I'm in high school because I lived in California. I was part of an anime club, and all the weebs and otakus were talking about, yeah, me and my family or my friends are going to go to Soccercon. I'm like,
Oh yeah. Mhm.
fuck is Soccercon? Like, what is this? It took me like probably
Soccercon? What's Soccercon? Do you play sports there? I remember a lot of people asking that.
it took me probably a couple of years later when Heroes of Cosplay came on to sci-fi. Like,
Mm.
oh, this is what
Oh,
cosplay is. This is what conventions are. Why did I just now find out about this?
Well, you know, it's funny that you mentioned that with the anime end of it started a little bit later, but most of the cosplay getting into the spotlight actually started, I probably say, the late '80s when Fangoria and Goers and all those guys started hosting the Weekend of Horrors in Frisco. Because you want to talk about an expressive and welcoming group. Holy hell. Horror fans are bar none some of the coolest people. I mean, they might be scary looking, but they're really cool. But they're very expressive. And other than maybe some of the fantasy stuff, but they would go and have some of the first contests, and a lot of it had to do with like guys like War, because they were cosplaying on stage in the 80s and stuff, and Kiss and all that. Now, granted, that's music, but I'm just saying that horror theme. So the Weekend of Horror started, and it became bigger and bigger every year. And then you started seeing some of these mask makers, Tom Savini's out there, Chris Wallace, that kind of stuff.
His work is something else. That's all.
Oh yeah, Tom's great. So these guys were trying to emulate that kind of stuff, myself included. And you'd read about it, and then you get to see it firsthand, and then it kind of started spreading to where that aspect of it infected every other culture. It's like, okay, well, there's always been the back in the day, it was Japanimation cons and stuff, because anime wasn't really a coined term, and you did have comic cons, but it was mostly for dealers. But there was still cool keys that you could go buy. And the cosplay stuff, like I was saying, secondary, sometimes tertiary to the main events. And then when you start seeing, like I said, Weekend of Horrors and some of these others get like on the Masters of Horrors TV shows, and the horror hosts becoming popular, Count CC Ryder, Elvira, boom, boom, boom. Oh, it's acceptable. It's on TV. I can see it. And you move on from there, and there's your progression. And then now, Soccercon comes in, Kumara-con, all these others, they're very specialized. That wasn't a thing. They were all bundled, like I had said before, like Pasadena or some of the others. They were just strictly Star Trek, almost exclusively.
It was more like sci-fi and fantasy conventions where, like
definitely.
like your dad, your brother, your uncle would, dress up like as Darth Vader, a Star Trek character, a Klingon, Cylon or whatever, grab parts from a junkyard garage. I mean, I've seen pictures and heard stories and everything. It's like. And you didn't really see, I mean, not trying to be sexist or anything, you didn't really see, like, I think when we talked about it, there wasn't really a whole lot of female cosplayers, maybe like an Uhura or a Princess Leia every so often.
Yeah, and then with the horror ones, you did see a lot of Vampirellas, you did see some of the Elviras and stuff, but that's, once again, that's its own separate genre that was light years ahead of the rest of the people as far as the community, but they were always outcasts. And I'm not talking like, the pseudo goth or anything like that. I'm talking about horror fans as a genre, as an art form that incorporated all that together. And there was more females on that end of it, but that helped spur, oh, hey, it's awesome for, this game. And game at that point, what I'm talking about was like tabletops and stuff, D&D, whatever, these fantasy ones started going on. And then there was more of an inclusion, but that took a lot longer than it probably should have. Because I mean, some of the best ones out there are female. As far as manufacturers, and I'm not talking about necessarily models. I'm talking about people that make this stuff. They put me to shame, man. It's crazy.
Now for
definitely harder to find male seamstress. I mean, it's kind of like a loaded title, right?
I mean, you're a male seamstress.
Yes,
so, I mean, I've seen
Seamster. I don't know.
Seamster.
Taylor. I think
Taylor. I think
Taylor. Well, but and I've seen your cosplays. I guess now, asking you now, what was it like being a cosplayer back in the early 2000s?
I definitely have always had sort of like this mentality of I don't really care what other people think of me. Like I'm just having fun and having a great time, and like if I can make other people smile, that's awesome. So I never really felt like an outcast myself, but I know that there were a lot of my friends who sort of maybe got bullied a bit for dressing up, and I always thought that was not cool. So I tried to do what I could, like in high school, to make it more of an acceptable thing. And when I was in high school, I started doing like a cosplay Friday thing where we would just dress up at school every Friday.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So that kind of helped to make it more normal, I guess. And then,
it's funny you say that, because kind of the parallel that within the community, you never felt like an outcast. Outside of it, it was almost a dirty secret. And, of course, once again, we're going a little bit farther back. But in high school for me in the early 90s, well, actually, I graduated in the early 90s. But anyway, being in theater helped tremendously.
Oh, yeah.
And then being attached to some of the professional haunted houses through our theater groups.
Oh, yeah.
It cool. Almost became expected because, those theater nerds and stuff, they saw, but it was still a separate thing, but it made it a little bit more accessible. And I don't want to say, like I said, dirty secret, but you didn't want to like, oh, hey, guess what I do on the weekend?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's not something that everybody would get. and even with your the only reason I mentioned it because you said your friends, even with the people that did it with you, wouldn't admit to it under gunpoint publicly. Yeah. And you know, and it's unfortunate, but that's not the case anymore. It's almost expected of people. It's great.
Definitely.
I love it.
What was your very first cosplay back in 05 then, Diz?
I actually had a few at that convention, but it was Anna Kiyama from Shaman King and Taojin from Shaman King, and also Maraku or the Dark Moloch from Yu-Gi-Oh! That was my lineup for the weekend at Soccercon.
Now, were those, did you make them yourself, or were they like store-bought or whatever you could gather from like a thrift store or something?
It was a little bit of all of that. I was definitely still like super basic sewing skills at that point. You know, my mom would help me with some of my costume stuff. I made a couple of pieces for each one of those costumes, and then other stuff, it was like, oh, look, here's like a piece of cloth that's got a cool dragon pattern on it, so I'll use that for this skirt element. Or here's some shoes that are the right shape, so I'll just put like a piece of cloth over the strap part to make it look like the right sandal, stuff like that. So it wasn't 100% from scratch. It wasn't like super fancy over the top by any means. It was far from that.
And you said you went as Merrick?
Yeah.
He's the one with the staff, right?
The little rod.
Yeah, Staff of Ra. Okay, nice. It sounds like you had a good fun though. What was it like attending a con? What was it like attending a con back then?
I remember it was, oh my gosh, it was way smaller than Soccercon is nowadays. Like, leagues different. I mean, even going in 2007 and then going in 2017, the difference was ridiculous in terms of size. So back then, this was before they moved over to the big new convention center. This was at like basically a little hotel convention center. And, you know, you have like the conference room, that's the dealer's hall, you know.
Or their banquet room.
Yeah.
Some of them aren't very big.
It wasn't. It was like, you know, maybe 20 vendors in total. And there were a lot of people there in my like comparison, because I grew up in kind of a small town myself. But I don't know, I mean, maybe a couple thousand people by comparison to nowadays. It's like
nowadays it's like in the tens of thousands.
I mean, I don't know what the exact numbers are for Soccercon these days, but I would imagine just like visually comparing the two.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
It
was really cool though, because it's like I do this for fun for myself at home, but being in this environment where even though it was only 100 people or whatever in an area doing,
to know you're not alone. And to see other people that are into it, I mean, that makes
it's
the
like,
world of
oh
difference.
my gosh, I don't have to just dress up on Halloween. I could do this whenever I want. It was,
oh man,
yeah, exactly.
That's like anyone's reaction to that. Brian, cosplaying and going to San Diego Comic-Con back in '89. Who did you cosplay, and what was San Diego Comic-Con over 30 years ago?
Well, like I said, it was a Batman. It was a really bad homemade Batman. And my buddy Jeremy went as a Spider-Man, which was almost exactly the same thing. In fact, I think it was a ski mask that he had cut eye holes out of and painted white around it.
Hey, his homemade Spidey suit, just like in the movies.
Yeah, except, you know, far down the trough as far as skills concerned. But in fact, I want to say his pants were actually just blue sweatpants and stuff. But well, you know, you use what you had on hand. As far as then, okay, so Batman had just come out and was gaining a lot of steam. Todd McFarlane had just taken over Amazing Spider-Man, so there was getting because ASM 300 was coming out and all that kind of stuff, Torment and all that.
Just a few years before Spawn.
Yeah, but yeah, about 3 years before. So you've started seeing more and more, I want to say, names getting thrown out that people could recognize, and that was probably the year or the year after that it started switching more from comics to being a pop culture convention that it is today. So back then, the San Diego Convention Center, the one hall they rented was pretty tiny. It wasn't very big because you might only had a couple hundred vendors on either side of it, and it was big booths. But you had a lot of signings, and it was strictly almost all comics. Occasionally, you could find some bootleg VHS stuff, you know, yeah.
Which would be banned at any con. I've heard some stories about the outside vendors
if they catch it.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're at the Pasadena Grand Slam, I caught the European cut of Highlander and a two VHS tape, and then I got the work print of Dune on like 3 VHSs, but it was never available here in the States. So you wouldn't just go for comics. Occasionally, you could luck out on stuff like that. Falling into finding like Cannibal Holocaust, things like that stuff. No, but I'm just saying. Some of the specialty stuff that wasn't mainstream, because even then comics really weren't, but they were just starting to get that notoriety and steam. So the growth was just becoming exponential. So that first year, I want to say it was, I don't want to say tiny, but it was definitely smaller than what it is now.
Yeah.
And now it's got higher attendance, I think, than the Super Bowl does.
Oh, geez.
Wouldn't be surprised.
I think the only other one that still tops it is the Bassmasters Classic, that big fishing thing they do every year, which I used to follow that quite a bit because I'm a semi-professional bass fisherman. But anyway, some of these specialized events started just going boom, 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 because they started saying, hey, there's money in this stuff. And and that's where it became a little corporatized, but that helped some of these people start these anime conventions, Kurokon, Soccercon, blah, 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 all those down the line that were specialized, and they still had the heart there. They weren't just like taken over by, at the time, like say Blockbuster or WB or any of these guys that started, New Line, Miramax, whatever, because now it's just a big corporate event.
Oh yeah, no.
But just the change from, I would say 89 to probably 93, just worlds apart.
Oh, I believe it.
Instantly.
In the words of my friend Steve, aka Shit Speckle Monthly Fart, he basically it was and you can hear him say it in his cosplay interview. San Diego Comic-Con is basically like a lottery system.
Mm-hmm.
Getting into the con is like, you're spending close to $500 just for like a couple, like 2 days or so. I don't know how much tickets have gone up and now. How much were tickets? I'm gonna ask you the same question. How much were tickets back then for San Diego Comic-Con?
I think to get in and to guarantee a signature of Sergio Aragonis and Stan Sakai, the Usagi Yojimbo writer and an artist, was maybe $25.
That's like your standard price for a local small con.
Yeah, and without anything attached to it. Right?
Nowadays, it's like, oh, you want an ID badge? You want VIP access? Well, it's going to cost you almost $1,000.
Yeah. I want to say 25 or 30, somewhere in there, because they weren't really doing photo ops or anything like that. And if you did, it was on a film camera. But that sounds about right. I'd almost have to ask my buddy if he remembers, but that sounds about right. I don't remember paying that much, and it was just chore money that got us there. But got signature, got to talk to Sergio and Stan. McFarlane was way too big of a line to bother with.
With a big name like Todd McFarlane, you're probably waiting like 2 hours at least.
Yeah. Well, yeah, at that time, but he wasn't really that big until that year. That's when everything really started kicking everything off. And then, all the obviously the Batman stuff was just everywhere. Yeah, that was crazy. But it was cheap. I mean, like dirt cheap. I mean, I pay more for a streaming service monthly than I did for con now. It's nuts. It's crazy.
Same question for you, Diz. How much were tickets back at 05 for Soccercon? And you said that was like when they first started out?
I want to say, well, I mean, it wasn't their first year, but it was back at their original location at the old convention center. I want to say that it was kind of in the same price range for the full weekend. It was $25, $30, somewhere in there. And, it's a 3-day event. So when you look at that starting out, like that's been your experience. And now you're looking at the ticket prices and you're like, it's so
$25 will get
maybe I'll
right?
just go one day.
Yeah, right. It's
but even then,
crazy.
$25 isn't going to get you even a full day in most of these cons. I don't think
it's
Rose City
like
was that
$40 for one day or something.
Yeah, no, certain cons they do, which I'm glad they do. They do the early access thing where you can pay
Yeah,
like
that's the only
50,
way.
50, $60. Like for example, Sac Anime, when I went back in 2019, for like all 3 days for one person it was like $50.
That's not bad.
That's their early deal. Like I know cons nowadays, if you're lucky, especially those somewhat well-known cons, they'll have like early bird specials or whatever for like a couple months. Then they'll like raise the price to like up to like another extra 10 to 15. So if you can get like a early deal on a con that's well known, you're good. But other than that, you're probably paying full price at front door.
So like for comparison, Kumoricon, which is smaller than Soccercon but bigger than like a small local.
Oh yeah, no, I've heard.
Yeah. They are $80 at the door for the full weekend, and through March for pre-order, it's $50.
Shit.
So,
which is crazy for such a specialized convention too, but it is because there's money there and there are rabid fans and it's taken up. I was going to say,
I'm sure there's been inflation and such too, but
sure. But I mean, it's just crazy to think the prices are like that for something that specialized. I was going to say, exactly. Some of the bigger, smaller cons that I went to in Vegas when I lived there, like Jackie Gunn's Union Plaza would host them, and occasionally some of the other convention centers. They weren't huge. They might take up, their banquet or concert halls. They might have been like a $5 entrance, but some of those were the best ever. I got to see Jonathan Frakes, and anything above and beyond the entry was like where the money was going. But I got to see Jonathan Frakes there, Patrick Stewart. These are all different at different times.
Nice.
Yeah, they had some big names for these conventions, and then they had the Q&As and stuff. And that's one of them that I went to that I stopped going to for a while because of how that fan and fandom line was getting really blurry for some people. But what I'm saying is those smaller cons, they didn't cost as much, but the volume of stuff they had there, they were almost as enjoyable, and they never really got too big for their own heads, unlike the Pasadena Grand Slam, because same thing with what's happening to some of these others. Oh, well, if you nerds will pay, $20, you'll damn well pay 40, and then they'll dangle this carrot over your head. Yeah. Oh, it's terrible. I hate to see that.
It's
true.
They tease you with, when they post it on the website, like this is the guest or the artist that's coming. If you really want to see them, this is a price you have to pay, and then you get to the con and you have to pay an extra price if you want to get an autograph or photo. Which brings me to my next question, since you brought up celebrity guest. If you can remember far back, Diz, who were the celebrity guests for Soccercon in 2005?
Oh, that's a great question. And I'm not sure if I could even say, because I wasn't like super into like the whole otaku, like, oh my God, it's so-and-so's voice actor. I want to say it might not have been
back then.
2005.
It was probably James Marsden doing most of that stuff anyway. Sure.
I don't want to say I can't remember anything from 2005 because it was more just like this overwhelmingly awesome nerdy experience.
Right, but like years after that, or like the next few ones you went.
I want to say that Scott McNeil, who voiced Koga in Inuyasha, was one of the voice actor guests of honor at Soccercon in 2006, 2007, somewhere in there. And I know that they had, a couple of different Japanese like pop bands who came and played,
which is
I got a ticket to go and see.
Nice.
Now it's like, good luck.
Right. Now I'm gonna ask Brian here. Did they have cosplay competitions back in '89 for San Diego Comic-Con?
No. Nope, not that I remember ever seeing. If they did, it was never announced, or it could have been on the day that I wasn't there, but I don't remember ever seeing anything, because like I said, there was only a handful of people, and most of the good ones were attached to a studio. So, there was an official WB Batman out there, and I'm trying to think, there was a Vampirella from, trying to think of who published that, from the comics and stuff, but most of them were going to be their professionals or their studio models and stuff. So yeah, the average
like
Joe
wear like a screen accurate Batman,
or as close as possible. Sure.
That's actually really cool. I don't think that they really do that anymore. Like studio advertising, have an official cosplayer on site.
I go out to my shop and make just as good, and it still advertises for them, and they're not having to pay somebody.
Nowadays at a con, you'll see like a giant poster or billboard promoting it instead of seeing like a character actor.
Yeah, but that was a big thing, and I don't remember ever seeing too many actual, like, now everybody's in costume. It's a rarity to see somebody that's not, but back then, it was one person in every 100 that might be actually dressed up something. Hell, even just wearing a shirt like you are, Wayne, like that was, this guy's awesome because he's wearing,
he likes Batman too. Oh!
I mean, hell, my first con back in 2017, I just wore, a Batman 1989 Batman hoodie and 1989 golden Batman belt buckle.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, even shirts like that, they were just, I mean, that film, Bob Kane and Stan and all those guys that, because Stan Lee helped get that on the screen too. All those guys that helped get their
real quick
onto the screen.
I'm gonna be adding another person who wants to be part of this.
Sure.
All right. So
continue.
You did what were cosplay competitions like back in 05?
I didn't actually enter any contests until 2007. And I don't really remember earlier than that, like in terms of attending them, but it was definitely more of sort of like a casual, the costumes are still really cool, but like if you compared the costumes that won back in, we'll say 2007 to the costumes that are winning today, it's like comparing a super casual person to a professional. And I think it's just because the materials and the technology is like so much more accessible, and all of the tutorials and things like that. So somebody who invests the same amount of enthusiasm and time that they did back then can make something that's just a gajillion times better. Not a gajillion, but
While we wait for the other person to come on, because I'll be asking the questions you guys. First with Diz, what was it like entering your first cosplay competition? I remember you telling me you entered a few, even some digital ones.
Yeah, I did do a couple of digital ones. I actually haven't done a lot of competitions, mostly because I really enjoy like the play aspect of cosplay. I think that it's more important to have fun and enjoy yourself and your costume.
I wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah. But I did enter in, I think it was 2007. My friend and I, two of my friends and I entered as a skit. And it was pretty cool. Everybody backstage was super, super supportive, and it was a really great energy, and it was really a goofy skit. And I remember like our audio levels, looking back on it, were just like really out. Like, here's the music and it's really loud and the voices are a little bit quiet, but it was fun, and everybody screamed when we came on stage because they were so hyped, so it was a really great experience doing that.
And I think our fourth person is in. I think we're waiting for them. While we wait for them to get connected, Brian, have you ever entered any cosplay competitions over your 30 years of cosplaying?
Oh yeah, quite a few. The first one, but see, that's, I was gonna say, and Diz had touched on that too, with the way some of those earlier ones were. They weren't really competitions. It was more of a showcase.
Like a masquerade.
Definitely.
I think they called it masquerades.
I don't think I ever heard that term thrown around. It was basically just a costume showcase or a showdown kind of stuff. There wasn't really, I was going to say the first one that had a monetary prize, I want to say, was one that I did in '97, and that was just me and two of my friends as Starfleet officers.
Nice.
But prior to that, well, they were huge Star Trek fans. I just learned a lot of it by osmosis. I mean, I love the Trek, but it's just not, by accident. But most of the ones prior to that, it was basically like, oh, hey, here's a model kit, or here's a vinyl statue of Frankenstein's monster or something. But there wasn't money, dude. These were vendors and stuff that had traveled, like, say, from Mile High Comics in Colorado or something, to go out there to try and sell their freaking comics. The cosplay stuff was, like I said, secondary, tertiary thoughts. So they weren't really contests until, I'd probably say, the mid to late 90s. And that's where that ball started rolling, because, hey, anything to get more people's interest in it. But prior to that, a lot of people dressed up and would do, like, say, the question and answer stuff in costume, or do the trivia contest. It was more merch based than anything else. And then the first big one, that actually really meant anything to me, I'd say, because off and on for over the years it went into, was probably when Yukon had their first one, and that was like in
Yukon.
2014.
What's
That's
that?
the one up in Eugene.
Oh, okay. I've never
Isn't that the
heard.
one that's been through like 4 different names?
It's always had, well, it started off as Eugene Comic Con way back when, died, and then came back as Yukon in 15.
Oh, okay.
And when Hoyes bought it and started doing it with Chris 51, that first year, which was 2015, was the first one that like really meant anything to me, because it was me, my now son-in-law, my ex-wife, and all that stuff were involved, and did that. But when you got to a certain level of skill, some of these smaller cons can't accommodate a professional level, because it's like walking in and hitting the I win button, which we've done here for Star Wars Day and Halloween and stuff, whatever.
Sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to see if you guys could hear me. Sorry.
Yes.
We can hear you, Kayla. Welcome, by the way.
Okay.
Hey-o.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it really came down to the play end of it, like Diz was saying. It's like, if I can win, great, but there's a lot of hassle and effort to do that. To walk away going, my God, I am tired and this sucks. I spent the whole year on something that I just got blown out of the water because somebody in a dress looks better or something silly. I don't mean, but it's serious. Stuff like that happens, dude. It's crazy. I've been disqualified for being a professional, for one. That sucks. And I was only entering just to show off stuff. I've had friends of mine disqualified because they were friends with me, even though they made their own stuff. They couldn't prove that I didn't make it.
I've noticed some cosplay competitions are strict, like depending on the category. If you're an amateur and they see that you have a high quality costume, they're like, oh, you shouldn't have entered this one. You should have entered in the professional.
Yeah. But if they don't have that category, like I said, it's either unfair. So from a moral standpoint, you should do it. And then secondly, it makes it difficult for them, because then it's so one-sided that, the audience gets involved. And so, that whole dynamic's changed, and they've actually kind of categorized themselves quite fairly anymore for the cons that can accommodate it. But prior to that, like I said, man, it was just to show shit off, dude. That's all it was. It was just like, hey, look at me, and that was awesome. That's all it needed to be. That was the cool part. Once again, that one of us mentality. Like Liz was saying, that's all that really mattered.
Now since Kayla's in here, I guess first off, how long have you been cosplaying for, Kayla?
I started in 2007.
Nice. So about
like Soccercon this year will be like 15 years.
Well, congratulations on your 15 years of cosplaying.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Now I guess also I'm going to be asking you questions that I already asked Diz and Brian, to get through that real quick, so we can get caught up. What was your very first cosplay at Soccercon back in 2007?
That was Mimi from Fully Cooley. Yeah.
Wait, Fully Cooley?
Yeah, Fully Cooley, Mimi.
I don't know who that is. Is that the person with the pink hair?
No, that was the girl in she's like a high school girl who is like
That's the cat.
Always like
okay.
Yeah, she has the little cat.
I've only heard of that anime once, and that was like years ago and back in high school.
What are you saying? FLCL is a cult class? I mean, it's kind of always been a bit of a cult classic.
What was Soccercon like back in 2007 for you?
Well, since it was my first con, it was just overwhelming. I was like 16 years old and had never set foot in any sort of convention before. And it was just like wild and sparkly and like, oh my God, all the things that I see on the internet are real now. And it was like, it was like super exciting and just like a total sensory overload.
Oh, I bet. Like I was asking Diz and Brian, and it'll probably be the same answer. What were tickets? What were the cost of tickets back for 2007 Soccercon?
I wish I could remember that, honestly, because I know it was like so much less. Like I know it just goes up a little bit every year. I don't remember what I paid.
Did you go?
I think it must have been like $40 for a weekend pass back then. That would be my guess.
I could see Diz agreeing with that, because Diz, as he said,
slight increase. Yeah.
like well, just also what I think. Oh, what else would I ask? Did you happen to any enter for your 15 years of cosplaying? Did you happen to enter any cosplay competitions, whether they're at the con or as a digital con?
I haven't entered any contests at big conventions like Soccercon, but I will enter contests sometimes at like smaller events. Like I don't know if you've ever been to Dragon Fest in downtown Seattle. They have like a cosplay thing every year, or they did prior to COVID. And like I went to Geek Girl Con and I did that contest once, and I entered at New Con. So like I guess because I find the big ones kind of intimidating, but for like smaller events, I've jumped in a couple of times to a competition, not thinking that I was going to win anything, but just because it was like a fun experience, and I was like, I can go on stage and it'll be fun.
Nice.
Can I just add something onto that? I feel like over time the competitions have kind of become more of like a stressful thing, whereas like back when Brian and I were talking about entering a long time ago, before like cash money was a prize, you know, it really was just sort of a fun thing. You know, you get up there and you're showing off and everybody's like, whoa, your costume's so cool, whether it's amazing or not. And now it's like, man, why would I bother entering this contest when I know that Yaya Han is competing or something like that? I mean, obviously Yaya Han is not competing
and like
anymore,
I get that it is a competition. It's a competition, and like I get that, you know, there are people who are there because they really do want to, like, you know, show off their chops and stuff, and that's great. Yeah. But it makes me wish sometimes that we still had like a non-competitive like cosplay thing, because that's not really a thing anymore. Like I want to have just like people who aren't really in it to compete, but just who want to go up on stage and just like
a costume parade.
Perform,
there are
like a parade. I think Anime Expo used to have something like that called like their chibi contest or something like that, where it wasn't really a contest; it was just like a showcase. And they should bring something like that back for Soccer.
Dragon Con still does that before first day. They do the entire street. I mean, everybody that's dressed up does that.
I've heard Dragon Con stories from other cosplayers about that.
Yeah. And then Dragon Con at this point is also still pretty much fan run. So that's a large part of it, you know, and the most obscure cosplays you can possibly imagine will appear there.
That's an understatement on obscure.
Oh, it's crazy. But so they still do that. And then from what I understand, they're still doing that for San Diego Comic-Con, but a lot of times, so my brother just recently moved up here from down there. They would just go outside of the convention center and watch, because a lot of the guys that couldn't get in would still show up dressed up, and they would just do their parade in front of it. They weren't really trying to enter a contest, or they wanted to be dressed up. So there are pockets of it, but as far as being a mainstream thing, the only one that comes to mind is Dragon Con at this point, because even like Rose City, even the little kids one, it was for a competition. I think it was like for a little onesie or something. It's crazy. But I'm with Kayla. It's like I wish that was more of a focus on some of them, but like we said before, these corporations smell blood in the water and money, you know, and then that's it, and it becomes corporatized. And you want to breathe my air in my convention center? It's $5, you know. It's terrible. I would be all for that. Hell, even just a con, just to go dressed up. I don't have to have vendors and shit there. No. Hello, nerds. Let's get it on. You know, I mean, it would be awesome.
Before we continue, Kayla, what pronouns do you prefer to go by?
They, them would be great. Thanks.
Okay, just making. All right, thank you. I guess starting with this, what was it like when you made your very first cosplay? Like you stitched it together and everything, or built it, or you know, use your tailor magic.
Before I was truly a tailor, I remember a couple of different like stages in terms of my costuming, like progression, I guess you could say, or growth. I remember that first year that I went to Soccercon in 2005, you know, it was very like things were just sort of fray checked on the edges. There was no hemming happening. And then in like 2007, I made my Envy costume from scratch.
I remember that.
Yeah,
I remember that's one of the pictures, I think, the cosplays we talked about in your podcast a while back.
Yeah, and so like that had a zipper in it. That was a big deal for me.
Wait, where was the zipper?
In the back of the top.
I know he wears like crop top.
Yeah, in the crop top to get it on.
So
that was like a big
clever,
accomplishment for me.
That's pretty clever, because I know usually you just put a zipper on with the crop top. That I think that you know, whether male, female cosplayer, that's a pretty clever idea.
Yeah.
You see that a lot. You see that like on a lot of Zentai suits or like Spider-Man suits nowadays.
And hiding it in there is definitely a good trick. And then I remember in I think it was 2009, I made my first pattern and the whole costume from scratch, pattern and all. And that was like a really super satisfying thing, even though like I'll look back at it now and say that's really blocky and not form-fitting at all.
You're your own worst critic, is everybody. I do. It's par
still
for the course.
For what it was, and it being, you know, my first patterning foray and my first completely from scratch by myself, like I'm still pretty proud of the work that I did there.
Should be.
Nice. Yeah. Brian, I've seen your, even in person, I've seen your cosplays from your Ghostbusters to your ODST to your Spider-Man. What was it like when you made your very first official cosplay that by yourself?
Embarrassing, but no. Okay, so the first one that I actually ever put any real serious effort into was a lot of stuff off the shelf. I mean, I think I must have just annihilated 2 or 3 aisles in Toys R Us back when they were a thing. Well, because you know,
wait, Toys R Us, Toys R Us, what's that?
Yeah.
Oh right, yeah, kids these days.
Yeah, hey, you damn kid. But there was a lot of like dress up stuff for kids, like knights and military stuff.
I remember those.
So I would go and steal, or not steal, but you know, I'd go and just cannibalize. Like the knights
around.
Why
is that adult getting all those kids costumes?
Well, yeah, but it didn't have much of a choice. So
no, you didn't.
You know, that's like the knight chest plates, maybe the shields, and just cannibalize it down into something. And then I think my cape for that one was actually a big blackout curtain that I actually attached big black chains to. And I mean, I had real chains. I would never do that again because it's way too heavy. But you know, putting all that kind of stuff together, you know, it was the passion involved in it. It was the sense of accomplishment. Now I look back on it now, and it's grossly embarrassing. But I want to say, even my shoes, I had to top off with ace bandages to actually give me more of a top of a boot, because I, you know, like women shoes are awesome, and I will shop for those for cosplay boots because they have such cool designs. But you know, back then there was a pair of tennis shoes or just work boots, and then bring it up from there. So like I said, there was that sense of accomplishment. It was great. It was awesome. Didn't really do anything with it. I think we're at Halloween and a couple other times at cons and everything. It was like this big demon knight thing. It was really awesome. And it was a latex appliance. It was just a son of a bitch to put. Oh yeah, it was tough with a big face mask and stuff. But that was where it's like, okay, if I can do that with this stuff and it didn't meet what I wanted, what's next? And that's where the creating your own pattern comes into play, because it's like, oh, okay, I see how they made this. Shit, I could have done that easier had I known that beforehand. But materials and resources were not really much of a thing, and that would have been probably 95-ish.
What was the what was the character?
It was just, it was like this big gargoyle demon knight thing. I had these big elf ear things that I had found.
Nice.
And, they were actually Spock ears, but I added to them. And then
nice.
It was like a metal face mask, and then used dermoplasty and fake scar stuff, which I didn't know you're supposed to either wax or lip balm your eyebrows. Yeah, that would have been nice to know.
I could tell Diz has had that experience.
Yeah. So, you know, to bring my brows out and everything, and then, you know, I had symbols and stuff painted on it. But, you know, it was a learning experience across multiple fronts. But yeah, I was like basically just a gargoyle demon knight thing. It was really cool.
Nice.
And
sounds pretty epic.
It worked. Oh, yeah, it was awesome. I mean, it looked much better in my head than the finished product.
I'm sure that your enthusiasm for the costume, though, I'm sure that came across and made it feel as epic to other people too.
Well, and then, you know, having an 8-foot cape behind you was awesome too.
Nice.
Yeah, see, that sells it. But you know, we still just go back to the passion involved. Who cares how it looked? I wasn't doing it for money. I wasn't doing it for anybody other than myself. You know, if I ended up being the coolest looking one at work or my friends' parties or something like that, that was just a bonus to it. But yeah, that looking backwards, yeah, I'm proud of what I put into it. But oh man.
Now, Kayla, what was the very first cosplay that you ever made yourself?
I did like bits and pieces of like my first 2 or 3 cosplays of like Sora from Digimon, and like Yo-Yo from Jet Set Radio, and I think the first one where I made
nice.
The first one where I did like whole outfit head to toe was actually Malin from Zelda Ocarina of Time.
Nice.
Which was like it's actually a really simple outfit that she wears if you look at just the construction of it. So it was like really easy peasy as far as the sewing goes, and then it was just like lots of like painting on little things with fabric paint and like making my accessories out of clay and stuff.
Nice.
And to this day, I still like I will usually like piecemeal my outfits, and I am more of a like buy something that's close and modify it kind of person
Nothing wrong with that at
than
all.
I am a like sew everything from scratch kind of person. And like I'm gonna maybe start getting back into sewing more, but me and sewing machines don't always get along. So a lot of times, if I can, like I'll make any number of things. I'll make accessories, I'll make jewelry, I'll style my own wig, but like I will avoid sewing unless I absolutely have to.
Nice.
Just gotta find a team.
And for those who don't know, Jet Set Radio is an old Xbox game, takes place in a cyberpunk dystopian city where you're playing as a bunch of
it was Neo Tokyo. They were
Neo Tokyo,
taggers
and they were on rollerblades.
Actually, the first one was Sega Dreamcast. The second one was an Xbox game.
Yeah, it was Jet Set Radio was the first one. Jet Set Radio Future was the Xbox one.
Man,
yeah, I've got them.
I've
and I'm still cosplaying from that series because just this last weekend at MagFest, I was Jet Set Radio Future, so I'm still doing it.
Awesome.
Best soundtracks ever.
Oh man,
that was J-pop before anybody ever knew it. I mean, what was it, Guitar Vader and all that stuff? Oh god,
Just you was the character you're cosplaying, was that the one with the red hair, or I can't remember the character.
Well, so Yo-Yo was in like he had orange hair in the original, and then in the sequel he had green hair for some reason.
Okay. Yeah, with the big glasses.
And I did the old. Exactly, and I did the old one, and then just this last weekend I was actually Rapid 99 from Jet Set Radio Future, which she looks a little bit like Hatsune Miku. She's got like green like pigtails, and I was really glad that nobody was like, "Hey, Miku."
I see. I like the fact that all of you guys like cosplaying classic characters or characters that people haven't seen or heard of in over 20 years. I mean, Jet Set. I remember Jet Set Radio, you know, came out like almost like over 20 years ago now. I guess now I'll say I think what starting with this, I think so far. So I gotta ask. I'm gonna be asking about specific cosplays. I don't know much about Kayla's, so I'll ask what was one of your favorites to make. For Diz, what was it like making Steampunk Titus from Final Fantasy X?
That was a really fun and really rapid fire project because it was one of those. I had been on a road trip with my mom leading up to the convention that I was going to be making the costume for, and I didn't have 100% of an idea solidified yet until like the last week of this road trip, and I did like a really rough sketch of here's what I think would be a cool outfit. So I just went from that, and then just in the course of a week just threw together the vest pattern and the pants pattern, and I was like incorporating little Edwardian details on the back of the pants where nobody was even going to be looking because it's under the vest, but I don't care.
All right,
costume
Peter Jackson,
details.
what the hell?
Yeah, maybe not quite, but yeah,
almost,
it was just a really like intense week of making something that I just pulled out of my brain into reality. And that's always my favorite part of costuming, is like I have this really rough idea on a piece of paper and poof, magic. Now it's physical 3D.
I mean, Final Fantasy X technically is a steampunk type game.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really fun to sort of pick out those aspects of the game and try and incorporate them and emphasize them to fit the theme of the convention that year, which was a steampunk theme.
Nice.
So yeah, the design process was as much fun as the construction.
I know I asked this before. What was it like making the sword?
It was my first big prop that I ever made, and I made it out of foam core, like the poster board, which
Yeah.
It's not the best choice, but it did
No.
last for the weekend. I still have it. It's a little brittle, very delicate. I would love to remake it someday, but it was definitely a learning experience, and I am still really happy with how it turned out in the end. But there were a lot of struggles with durability because it's this big, huge sword. It's
Oh, I
like
mean,
almost as tall as me, right? And
it's
it's
a pretty, in the
just
game.
this
It's in the
flimsy
game.
foam board.
In the game, it's like what, a 4-foot sword, I believe.
Yeah, I want to say it's 4 and a squidge feet
I mean,
long. So
jeez.
yeah, so the 3D printing of the gears on the hilt helped it with some stability, but I did actually end up having to get literal metal bracing and bolt it through on the actual handle to give structure.
No, was the Jet sword? I can't remember if it was Jet sword or the Brotherhood sword that you
Brotherhood, sorry.
Okay,
Yeah.
the one that Waka gives you when they leave the stage. Brian, I know I asked this before. What was the process and how long was it to make your ODST armor?
Oh, insanely fast, because there was a gang of reference stuff from Andrew DFT. He had released the public files and stuff.
I remember you telling me about that.
Yeah, so the first one took forever because I obsessive stand the undersides of drawers, like Diz was saying. You know, I build this shit to like withstand microscopic inspection, and it's horrific to be like that because nobody cares what the inside looks like, but I do.
But you know,
you want to make sure you feel comfortable on the inside.
Oh, it's nerve-wracking though. So but it's ridiculously fast if you have something to go with. Now I had some input talking to him kind of after the fact with readjusting the patterns, but he had them released and it was meant to be a bare bones, really easy build. And I started building it the way he did, and I was like, oh, this is not going to work. So heavily modifying off of his stuff. And then when I got that knocked down, I think I had to make total of 6 suits. So it was mine, my then stepson's. I helped with another one. I built one for a guy on a commission. So all in all, when we did that one photo shoot, I think there was like 6 of us there in the photo shoot right there. And I helped inspire other people, but that process was fairly quick once you got it. But initially it's a little nerve wracking because you want accuracy for such an iconic thing. And
oh yeah, especially ODST armor.
Yeah, and it was, you know, reach was a big thing at the time and stuff too. But one of the things with some of that, I think there's a lot more freedom in an original character that you can get in a flow that doesn't have to meet those exact standards, because a lot of the stuff that I've built, costumes or props, if it's from a specific reference, there's people that will notice something like that. And you know, the scrutiny that you have to put yourself under. My Commander Shepard is another one that is really accurate, but I hated that build was crazy. So you're trying to build to that level. You're stressing yourself out over something that nobody but you really cares about. You know, like how you did inlays and stuff like that, because the end result speaks for itself. But what I was going to say is like doing your own original stuff. Well, I don't know. That's what it's supposed to look like. You know, you're not really held to a standard. You have a lot more freedom and creativity with it. Yeah, exactly.
Just close your eyes and cross your fingers.
Yeah, well, you know, some of the stuff, like I just get a generic helmet pattern and I can add all kinds of stuff to it and do whatever, and it looks like what it is, because who the hell knows? It's out of my head. So there's a lot to that original character stuff. But if you can knock out one that's accurate and you enjoy doing it, all the more power to you. But like I said, when you're doing it for somebody else, that does get a little nerve-wracking. But that ODST was a pretty quick process once you got down to it, but it's getting it out of your head.
I remember
it's getting past yourself.
I think it was like 2017 when I saw you guys at Medford Comic Con. Yeah, your then son and your daughter as Nightwing and everything.
Yep.
Really, I mean, really, I'm glad I was there when I saw that, because I've it's always like at certain cons that's when you see ODST armor. Now, Kayla, what would you say your favorite cosplay build over the years was?
Making me pick this one, God. But I think I feel a lot of pride in Prima Donna, which is actually a character from a Vocaloid music video called Echo. And she has a TV for a head, and has like 2 extra sets of arms.
Ooh.
And so I got to build not just the TV head, but also like the arms and like a harness that goes under my clothes so that I can like have the arms sticking out of my back.
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah, and I have worn that to like several different conventions just because it's so much fun, like seeing the looks on people's faces when they're like, "There's a TV head. Can they see out of there?" And I can. Like, I'm looking right at them, waving at them, and they're all like, "Oh God, it's real." Like, it's fun.
Oh yeah.
So now you got me curious, because usually this is a question I ask for get to know the cosplayer. How did you go about making the TV head? Because I've seen people at cons with like computer monitors over their head before, but how did you go about the TV head?
Yeah, I definitely didn't like harvest an actual computer because I have read about how to do that. And I'm like, oh boy, that sounds dangerous. Like, I'm sure I would just like cut myself or something. So I actually just had a cardboard box and cut like a screen. And I just happened to find some really good fabric at Joann that is like completely reflective on one side. And when you look at it from the other side, you can see through it.
Nice.
And like it makes your vision like a little bit dark, but you can see just fine. And so it's a really cool illusion because from the other side, people just see like this kind of foil, like reflective material. So that's the screen, and then the rest was just wire. And I made the arms and everything out of wire, and like elbow length gloves that I like stuffed with that polyfill fluff.
Nice.
And like I could pose it not just in the arms, but like right down to the fingers, so I could make the hands do what I wanted them to do.
Nice.
And it was really mostly just wire.
I mean, I found it on Facebook. See if I show Diz and Brian
the picture.
Yeah, it's okay if I show them the picture because I just found it where you're the one you're talking about. If that's okay.
Me?
Yeah. It's okay if I show Brian and Diz the cosplay we're talking about.
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, awesome.
Oh, nice.
Very cool.
That's really cool. I mean, the material. It looks very convincing, especially the arm.
Infinitely lighter than wearing an actual monitor on your head. I have a friend.
Well, and also,
thank you. Yeah, no, and I didn't want my neck to get tired either because I tend to wear my cosplays like as much as I can, and I'll wear them sometimes, for a whole day or half a day, and I got to think about like if it's going to be real heavy on my head, how am I going to manage this? And none of that stuff was heavy. The only problem was sometimes if I was moving through a crowded space, my hands would be smacking people around.
Dude, that's Tails, Dr. Octopus, anything with
Nine Tails.
You mentioned the big
Sephiroth.
sword.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
No, his wing, his
big
sword.
Yeah.
It's just now that on that topic, I guess over the years, what's been starting with Diz again, what has been your favorite big prop build over the years?
I've got to say the Graveyard Cleaver from my Faust the Eighth build.
Your what?
It's the Graveyard Cleaver. It's his big polearm weapon. It looks like it has a giant razor blade attached to the end.
From what again?
From Shaman King, Faust the Eighth.
God, I haven't seen that anime in years.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to look it up. Explain more about it though.
Yeah, it's so it is, I want to say, 1.5 feet taller than me. So it's like 6.5 feet, something like that. No, it would be closer to 7. Anyways, it's taller than me by quite a bit.
Oh, okay. Now I know who you're talking about. Yeah, he's another character you mentioned in your podcast.
Yeah.
Oh,
one of my favorites. Yeah. It's a big long staff basically with a giant razor blade. I made the whole thing out of wood, and I made it collapsible basically, so it breaks down into 3 pieces, so I could fit it in my suitcase and take it on a plane.
I found a better picture of the weapon you're talking about.
Yes, yeah.
Jesus.
Oh, nice.
I'll be showing like with your permission if I could show like a picture of the actual
Of
cosplay.
course, yeah, definitely.
I've
got progress pictures too.
Okay,
hanging the dowels from my garage rails so I could spray paint them.
How long was the process to make the weapon?
I want to say that the longest part was painting, just because it's like, do a base coat, wait for it to dry, do another base coat, wait for it to dry, do another one just to be really sure, wait for it to dry. Okay, now you can actually start painting it.
Yay!
Yeah.
The fun part now.
And then you have to put sealer on it too. Yeah, so it's 6 layers of paint or something ridiculous, and you have to wait at least a few hours in between each layer. So that took a really long time. I want to say that it was a week or two just for that prop, not including any of the costume construction stuff.
What year was that in?
Oh, that's a great question.
I always throw those curveball questions.
I think it was 2017. I think that was the year that I went back to Soccercon after a 10-year break.
Nice. Brian, you know I'm going to be asking favorite biggest prop you've ever made.
That I still have is probably my Gears of War Lancer, because it's built to scale. That thing's gigantic.
Yeah.
So I still have that. I do also have a Dwemer shield from Skyrim in the shop right now that's not completed. And that's a big one because, you know, it's meant to lock it, but they put their head in their arms too and all that.
It's called what? A Dwemer shield?
Dwemer, yeah, the Dwarven race from Skyrim, the shield.
I'm going to have to look that up now. Continue.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got that. It's all one piece minus the center. But like some of the big ones, I've done big guns. I think I'm not a big anime fan, so I don't know what it's called, but that big ass scythe thing from Ruby.
Oh yeah. Oh, her Scythe Gun thing. Yeah.
I don't know what the hell it is. I had to make it for somebody.
It's a big ass Scythe Gun.
Yeah,
just like you said.
Yeah. So I just had a bunch of pictures, put them up on the wall, and made it. So that was probably the longest, but the single biggest one was an axe for my ex-wife's Barbarian from Diablo 3, and from end to end it was 3 feet just on the blade. Yeah, the blade was 3 feet, and then it was probably about 4.5.
That's the shield you're talking about.
I've got that. I've got that sitting in my shop. Yeah,
shield. Gee, many crickets.
Yeah.
What did you make that axe out of?
Well, the axe was EVA foam sandwiched with paint sticks as the spine, and then I put it on, like, I think I used 2-inch PVC as the handle, but sectional so it could come apart.
Classic.
Yeah, that was a blast. That was a fun one.
I've heard stories how over 10, 20 years ago, EVA foam was not an easy thing to come by.
No.
Not in the forms that you can get it now. It was predominantly floor mats, or it was really spongy stuff.
Yeah, I think I can't remember if it was you or someone was telling me that they used yoga gym mats as armor. I can't remember who it was.
I did do that on my Steampunk Titus for the shoulder.
Okay, it was you, but I remember someone else.
I'm sure that other people have said it too.
Oh, I'm sure.
90% of my builds have been out of foam because it's a lot cheaper than working with fiberglass, and it doesn't hurt. Yeah. It doesn't.
Fiberglass is not fun.
What cosplay would you need fiberglass for?
Okay, so back in the day, Master Chief, right? Stormtrooper, because not everybody's got a big ass vacuum form table, and you would just make a form out of cardboard and then fiberglass it.
Well, and even Pepakura, right? I
a lot of times you fiberglass that.
Fiberglass tape over that. I don't know if that's still a thing that people do, but definitely was.
To get a castable form, yes, but now I've got 3 3D printers, so who cares? You know, it's the easier way to go. But yeah, I've got a Halo 3 helmet in my shop that's been fiberglassed over Pepakura. But
Pepakura, what the hell is that?
Paper folding is what it's for making models out of paper. It's awesome for patterning. But I was going to say, one of the other things we use fiberglass on, since you had mentioned foam core, we did the big Goron like powder kegs from Ocarina of Time, and that had a foam core to keep it light for a customer, and that had to get fiberglass on the outside. So it still holds its uses, but I prefer like binary epoxies more than anything else because they don't stink. Polyester fumes and I don't get along at all. It's horrific. But wearing it as far as armor, dude, no, never again.
No, I'll bet.
No.
Kayla, biggest prop or longest prop that took you to make, and what was your favorite?
Well, see, I don't really like make weapons.
Just like a prop in general. You know, it doesn't have to be a weapon. It could be like an object or an item the character uses.
Let me think for a minute. The longest amount of time spent on it.
Yeah.
Shoot.
All of them, right? The way it usually works out.
I mean, like even the arms that you were talking about. On your TV head character.
I mean, I did mention those, but they didn't necessarily take very long because it I kind of had all my materials ready to go, and so it was not really time consuming.
So it's very satisfying.
Was the armature and harness pretty time consuming? That looked like that might be a little bit of a thing to figure out?
Yeah, I mean, maybe a little bit, because that involved just like, I actually got this like plastic board stuff from a friend, that like, it's this like pretty like light but tough plastic
board?
sheet that I'm not sure what it's called. Like you can like score it and then it'll snap where you scored it.
That's probably Sintra foam PVC. That's great stuff. I use that shit all the time
exactly,
too.
Yeah. So I used some of that to create like a slot basically for like the wire to go into, and then used like parachute straps and stuff to like make the harness.
Okay.
So I mean, it was like there was a little bit of guesswork involved in getting the harness to like sit where I wanted it to, but I don't feel like that was like super time consuming. Yeah, I probably spend more time on wigs even.
That's
than I do on most of my props.
That's gonna be my
like sometimes like I've definitely taken a lot of time styling some wigs. I just did Evelyn, the KDA Evelyn from League of Legends, and she has those like crazy buns that were like there's like it was like a really multi-step process of like building a base for the buns and then trying to get all the hair to like form around it. And I had my friend Jamie help with that a little bit, but like yeah, that wig was such a labor of love. It took all day just styling that wig.
Nice.
Jeez. Yeah, now that actually brings me to my next question. For those who have worn wigs over the years, what was it like back then trying to get any wig for your cosplay back then? I guess Brian first, since you kind of
on the rare occasion that you could find them, it's going to be the equivalent to what like Magic Man is here. You know what I'm talking about, Wayne?
Mm-hmm.
There was like the joke and novelty stores, and
like Party City,
if that good,
right?
Yeah. And then anything else you would find was going to be at beauty supplies that would be predominantly for people that needed a wig for aesthetic reasons or whatever,
and also heckin' expensive if you're going to a beauty store. That was going to be the other thing,
because they are all legit. That was like wigs meant for everyday use. It was almost like going to a toupee store. So I never really did anything that I needed, because I mean I've got pretty long hair anyway, and I've always had long hair off and on, but most of mine I don't need it, and I've never really had it, but I've had to help my daughter like with her Nightwing. That's not her real hair. All that stuff, that's all wigs.
Oh, that was I thought that red hair was her actual hair when I saw you guys at
at one point, yes, but most of her current stuff and a few years off and on there, she's worn bigger wigs to match in. So I've had to help with it, but back in the day, it was almost or you're making it your damn self.
I've heard stories over cosplay interviews how like back in the day they went onto like a Japanese website to get a wig and finding out the wig it was like
website. What's that back then? See, that's what I'm saying.
Right.
Well, I mean, I've heard stories when people try to order wigs online back then, like the size was small because it was an Asian size wig.
Yeah,
that's still the case. Like I've learned my lesson with ordering any of my Spidey suits that I've got to go to their maximum size plus, because I'm 6 foot and the build and stuff. Because they are sized. They try to correlate, but I can only imagine what it's like for wigs, especially with the price they charge for them. No.
Oh boy. Diz, what was it like trying to find wigs back then for your cosplays in the early 2000s?
I have to confess that I used to have really long hair. So I always just hit up the Halloween stores after Halloween and bought out all of their hairspray, and I just sprayed my hair.
It works. I mean, I've seen some of your cosplays.
I had a lot of very colorful boogers, though.
I've seen some of your cosplays like recently where you are wearing wigs. Where do you get your wigs nowadays when you have to wear one?
Usually I just hit up Amazon, and there are a few suppliers on there that it's like I've purchased a couple of wigs from them, so I know their quality is okay.
They got good quality wigs. I've ordered a few wigs myself.
Honestly, like even when I was working at the children's theater here, we would purchase wigs from Amazon and then just alter them to whatever needed to be done for the stage. So it's I mean, yes, there is like a threshold of a super, super cheap wig. You kind of should expect it to not be great quality. But sometimes, if you're paying $20 for a wig or something,
Mm-hmm.
it's probably going to be decent and you can probably work with it just fine.
Oh yeah, no. Nowadays you got Arta wigs, or you got, commissioners on Etsy, where if if you want that good quality wig, you will pay close to like $200 to $300.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and the other great thing about the internet being super accessible these days, like lace front wigs are a lot easier to find now, and they're not nearly as expensive as they were when I was a young thing.
No. Kayla, what was it like trying to get a hold of wigs back then for some of your earlier cosplays?
I think when I first started getting into it, wigs were actually starting to become a little bit more accessible, because I think some of the like early wig shops were popping up around that time. One of them was Amphigori, and I remember everybody like got pretty much all their wigs from Amphigori, because there were only like 2 websites like you could buy from. And the thing about Amphigori is that they never actually had anything in stock. They were like a reseller, and so you would contact them for a wig that you wanted, and then they'd be like, okay, we'll see if we have it in stock in like a month. And so getting wigs on demand was just not a thing. And like there was, maybe one of you guys remembers what one of the other wig shops was called. I'm totally spacing on it because I don't think Arta was a thing yet, but there was another website that you could buy. Like, yeah, it was like a really basic. They just have like the most basic colors and styles. But there was another wig shop back then. And now, I mean,
definitely
there's still
the 2-day Amazon shipping did not exist.
No,
it sure didn't. And even with Epic, you can get free shipping that gets to you within like 3 to 5 days or something, which is such a miracle. It's not like you have to plan ahead for like 3 months to just have
for your stuff to arrive.
Yeah, it was rough.
Now, my favorite question that I usually always ask and get to know that cosplayer, and I'll start with this: any past cosplay convention horror stories you'd like to share?
Ooh, I might have to think about that.
If you want, I can ask someone else.
I'll tag while I think about it.
Brian, over your 30 years of cosplaying, any cosplay horror stories you'd like to share?
Yeah, and I think we had touched on it a little bit.
We did briefly.
Yeah, before. So I was at like probably 98, and it was at a Star Trek con in Vegas, and that's where I had mentioned I took a break for a while because of that fan and fandom line getting blurred. And it was during a trivia contest, and I think the prize was Enterprise D or E or whatever. Anyway, just a model kit.
Ooh.
But these guys started getting into it over the diameter of the warp core, because the answer that was given, some guy argued with him, and why the judges were going through the Omnipedia to find out. I mean, they actually got into a fist fight just right next to us. This guy came hauling us down the right. Oh, yeah. So, I look over.
Nerds can get violent when it comes to their fandom. Let me tell you.
Yeah, and like I said, when that fan and fandom fanatic line gets blurry and you see it cross that heavily, it was like, man, no, this is a little too much.
No.
It was like, no, I'm going to take a break for it. I think it was until probably 2004 that I went into con with any real intentions other than to buying something specific. Because, when you see something like that, now I have seen, body shaming, which pisses me off to no end. I've seen gender shaming and stuff that pisses me off to no end. But as far as anything that had a big impact, was seeing something like that these people are going to get violent over a shared love, and it's Star Trek of all things, universal peace and love and all that.
Right.
That was just too much. That was a little much. And to see that firsthand, as opposed to reading about it, was like, all right, I got to take a step back from this, because it's not like I was going to get to that line, but to see that and the impact it had, and the cops had to get involved in security and all that. They were actually, like I said, there was a knockdown, drag out fight. It's like, nope. So I took a pretty big step back from that. So personally,
that's like this kind of stuff you see in movies. It's crazy to hear.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. And I looked over at my buddy that was there with me, and I was like, dude, we got to go. I said, we're just out.
You don't want to get you don't want to get caught in the middle of that.
Well, not just that, just being around it kind of kills the whole vibe. That wasn't, wasn't the whole thing. And that was one that, like I said, affected me personally from going to anything further, just because it's like,
yeah, I don't blame you, man. That seeing that shit, let's just like, I can't imagine.
Yeah, it's just, especially where it was at, the whole point was inclusivity and all that kind of stuff, and it was over something so stupid too. That was the thing, and I just took a break for quite a few years. Yeah. See, the funny, but it was also very horrifying as to how funny it was and sad, and it was just like I can't. No,
I mean, that doesn't sound. I mean, from what I've seen, I mean, I haven't heard much. I've heard some pretty crazy stuff at con, but fistfights at con, is that like a common thing or is that rare?
I've never
seen one.
Yeah, I've never seen one past that.
It's rare.
Jeez, that's just like, yeah, I'm sorry, you think your fandom is better than the other fandom, but like, don't get in a fist fight over it. Just be an adult and just walk away.
In all honesty, Wayne, to the people that usually attend the cons that are serious about it, you'll rarely, if ever, see any real animosity. Now there are jokey, like, oh, you like that anime over this, or you like that series over this one, but it's usually done
on the internet.
But I'm saying in person,
it's rare.
I haven't seen it as much, but you will see some, joking, ribbing and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's people on the outside looking in that I've seen more of that kind of aggression.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but nothing to that point where they're charging anybody or throwing water balloons or any crap like that. Just usually, kind of thing as they drive by.
Right.
Fine. You expect
honk.
Yeah. You expect that kind of stuff. But like I said, to see the people that were involved get to that point was a bit.
And over Star Trek, no less.
Yeah.
Diz, have you found your answer yet?
I think mine is not nearly as horrifying as Brian's story there, but I do have a personal sort of horror / trauma that I remembered, and I might have mentioned it in our interview.
Probably. I'll, once I get to working on yours, I'll have to listen to
it. It was at Soccercon, and there were 2 different themed photo shoots that I wanted to attend on one day. And one was a Naruto themed photo shoot, and the other one was a Full Metal Alchemist photo shoot. So I came in my Envy costume, and then I swapped over to my Naruto OC, and I gave the bag with my accessories for my Envy costume to my friend, who was like, "Oh yeah, I'll be here. I'll keep an eye on it while you're at the photo shoot."
Very much stuff,
like,
mule.
Cool, great. Yeah, it's like just a little bag with a couple of things in it, like just put it in your backpack or whatever.
Right.
So I got done with the Naruto photo shoot, and she wasn't in the area anymore. So I, went and found her, and was like, okay, cool. Found her again. And I was like, so where's my stuff? And she's like, oh, I left it under the tree near the photo shoot. I'm like,
no,
okay,
I do remember this now.
So I go back to the area, and there's nothing, and I look all over, and there's nothing.
No.
And we go to Lost and Found, and there's nothing there. And like the entire weekend I kept checking back at Lost and Found and never turned up. The horrifying part of this for me was that I was going to be doing the competition that evening with my Envy costume, and those pieces were missing. So I went back to my hotel room. I used scrap fabric, and I duct taped it together just to be suitable on stage. But yeah, never found those missing pieces. I suspect that some bum in Seattle somewhere just
more than likely
adopted.
No, but that's heartbreaking though, because all that. Oh man.
I mean,
that's terrible.
I don't think it sounded like your friend just like got tired of the holding the bag or something. They could have at least, gone back to the hotel or something. Like,
it was,
and I can't stress this enough, because it's part of a convention safety and awareness, cosplay and safety and awareness thing. Do not leave your stuff unattended at a con, because chances are someone's gonna steal it, or someone will break into your car and steal it. Always leave it at the hotel, even if you have to leave the con. It's better to leave your stuff at a hotel or someone it's house than take it with you and then drop it off and then have it stolen.
Yeah. It was I'm gonna go with, we were young and dumb at that time.
I mean,
we were both pretty young.
And it sounds like your quote unquote pack mule just got tired of carrying your shit.
Yeah. There was definitely a bit of like, why didn't you just like hand it off to one of our moms? Because both our moms were there too. We were under.
It happens, it's a lesson.
Yeah.
It's a lesson you learned, and I'm sure it's a lesson that has stuck with you since.
Yeah, definitely.
Kayla, any convention cosplay horror stories that you would like to share over your past 15 years of cosplaying?
So I have two, and I can't decide between them. Is it okay if I just tell them both?
Go right ahead.
Okay. And they both happened at the same con, which is really great. The same con in the same year, because it was AkiCon, and it was the last AkiCon that I went to. And AkiCon is a horror story in and of itself. Like that whole convention is such a it's a crap show. So,
I've heard horror stories about AkiCon and how they usually were made to spite KomoriCon.
What I always heard was that they were basically banned from Soccercon for selling bootlegs, and that could be one of those stories that just gets passed around. I don't know if it's true.
That is the con, and
but,
yeah. Anyway, continue.
So at any rate, it was the last AkiCon that I went to, which I want to say was 2012. And that was the year that they had their artist alley in a leaky parking garage.
Ooh,
I've seen pictures.
Yeah, and so they didn't tell anybody, leading up to the con that's where the artist alley was going to be. So people were emailing them like, "Hey, where is the artist alley?" And they would not answer them because they didn't want people to know, "Hey, it's in a leaky parking garage." And people's art got ruined. Because it was raining, and it was raining all weekend, so people's art got ruined, and it was a total mess. But the best part was that they had these buckets basically stapled to the ceiling to try and catch leaks.
Oh no!
Well, guess what? The buckets filled, and the buckets got too heavy to stay upright. And I saw these people that were standing in line for an autograph or something, and I watched as one of the buckets tipped over and poured cold, dirty water all over this girl who was standing in line.
Oh, no.
And it was just one of the most horrifying things I've ever seen. It was dirty, it was cold, her outfit was ruined. It was so awful to witness. And I'm sure not the only person that happened to that weekend, because the ceiling was completely covered with those stupid buckets.
Oh my God.
So it had to have happened to multiple people. And I know multiple people had their art destroyed and were stark raving mad about it.
Well,
So
the
it was
art
terrible.
alone, considering how much effort some of these people put into one-off prints and stuff,
and they spend a lot of money for those tables too. So it was that was the year.
Tell me about it.
Obviously, that was the year that a lot of people said they were never coming back, myself included.
Yeah, I would.
But here's the other thing, and this happened to me, and it was that same year. And for some reason, I decided that I was going to go dressed as Wenda, which is the girl version of Waldo. It's Waldo's girlfriend.
I've heard of her.
And people, and so people don't know who she is. They just think it's girl Waldo. And so all day long, people were pointing at me saying, "I found Waldo," which gets really old really fast. So never do that, unless you really want people to be shouting, "I found Waldo" at you all day. But I got sick of it really fast.
Oh, but I believe it.
And so I was wearing this outfit, and I was sitting in a chair, just waiting for something. And a guy ran over to me, and he goes, "Hey, it's Waldo." And I was waving at him "Hey, whatever." And this guy runs over to me. He sits in my lap. This is completely unprompted. This complete stranger runs over, sits in my lap while I'm sitting there. He wrapped his arms around me and tickled my ear. And then he got up and ran. And I never found the guy. Nobody saw him again. It was
just got violated, basically.
Instantaneous. What was that?
You just basically got violated.
Basically, yeah. And I mean, all he touched was my ear, but it was still just one of the most bizarre things that's ever happened. That what makes a person think that. I think some people cosplay blurs their sense of boundaries. That they think because you're a character that you're
that's why that
a prop that they
isn't
can
consent movement got started a few years back just for that very reason.
It's just as bad as glomping back in the day.
Yeah,
exactly. And I was just sitting there did that really happen? It was so bizarre. And we never spotted the guy again. So he just disappeared into the night. And I've just been a little
spirit haunting
wary of cosplayers. Exactly. And then from that day forward, I've always just been very wary of my personal space and just be ready for those people that think that kind of thing is okay. I'm like,
Yeah, no joke.
you know,
Yeah, that was getting
thankfully
really bad.
nothing like that has happened since.
Well, that's
Good,
good.
glad.
But was this the same con?
Yeah, it was at AkiCon and it was the same year.
I've heard before. I've heard stories how, and I'm sure you can confirm this, how AkiCon does not give two shits of who they hire for staff. They don't care
funny,
about
man.
their con goers. I'm not going to say another story. I had a buddy of mine sent me a link about another horror story that has been confirmed. I'm not going to say anything more from that.
Yeah.
But yeah, from what I've heard, AkiCon was selling bootleg anime outside of Soccercon or something. Soccercon didn't like that, kicked them out. AkiCon was mainly made to spite Soccercon. And I've even seen I saw pictures that a Congoer took at AkiCon 20 something, and I saw the pictures of the water, of the big orange water buckets that you can buy like from Home Depot.
Oh my gosh,
And
that's
I'm
way
just,
too big to be putting on the ceiling. That's just
Yeah, that's-
ridiculous.
5-gallon buckets. That's what, almost 50 pounds of water, if not more.
Woohoo!
That's crazy. Yeah. Ugh.
Oh jeez. And this was in what, Washington?
Yeah, they started in Everett, Washington, and then they moved to, I think, Bellevue. And then they, since I stopped going, they moved to like the airport Hilton or whatever. They may still be going. Like every couple of years, I'll just check in and be like, AkiCon is still there. Like,
jeez, who's sporting the
wild.
money? Who's sporting the money to have that shitty convention? And I use that word. I highly use that word. I don't
Yeah,
care.
I think
I
it's
don't
just the
care.
fact that
I don't care if
people.
people at me at that, but from what I've read and from what I've seen, AkiCon is, yeah. Oof.
Ones like
It's
that,
rough.
Wayne.
And I think it's the like I think the age of attendees for AkiCon skewed a little bit younger. Like I think it was a lot of teenagers. And so some of them maybe just didn't know and like didn't realize that like, hey, this is not the way to run like a professional convention. And some of them will just like they'll throw down money for any convention. You know, it doesn't matter.
That's what I was going to say, because it's close. It's
what goes
close to
on.
home, and they don't have
Yeah.
to travel. It's not big. Yeah, that's
Cheap-
how they
Probably
that's-
cheaper. Yeah.
cheap con, like, you know.
Yeah, they were charging like half the ticket price of like Soccercon.
Sure.
Of course, yeah.
And of course, because they were cutting corners, and so I think a lot of people didn't care. A lot of people didn't know, and I would be willing to bet that they've basically gone defunct like since COVID started. But never say never. Like I don't really know.
Yeah. So we've been almost at this for good. This is like the longest podcast panel ever. I'm not making it sound like a bad thing.
We're just so cool.
Yeah.
So I guess 2 more questions, and I'll start with Brian. So over your past 30 years of going to cons, what is like the biggest change you've seen since then?
Oh, geez, just the merchandise, pretty much in a word, and the scope of which it encompasses. I mean, it's insane to see the most obscure stuff possible.
Swords, knives.
Well, no. Well, I was gonna say to see the most obscure sci-fi, horror, anime, video game, whatever, fandom have merchandise starting from keychains all the way up into hats and t-shirts and things like that. So I would say the popularity alone driving it as a business, which is double-edged, because I'm all for getting, like letting your geek flag wave high.
Oh yeah, no, definitely.
But not at the expense of corporatizing it and merchandising and all that stuff. But I was going to say that's probably the biggest thing. Like I said, just merchandising alone, where it becomes bigger than itself and it becomes institutional, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah, I'd say that's the right word.
And I think that's probably the single biggest change, because it went from something that just, a whole bunch of basement nerds went to in the late 80s and stuff, or early 80s even, to where everybody goes, because now it's an event. And you've got influencer types there, and
the people that used to make fun of you go to it now.
Oh yeah, and oh yeah. No, it's a huge reversal. But like I said, it's because of the merchandising and I guess institutionalizing of it. That's been the single biggest change that I've seen. Because back, the early '90s with the Pasadena Grand Slam, there was a lot of merch out there, but there's a lot of handmade stuff too. You'd see a lot of Star Trek jewelry, you'd see Star Wars stuff.
Yeah.
Really good quality stuff too for handmade.
Yeah, but it was all handmade by fans, and even the artwork and stuff. But now you walk in there and boom, everything by everybody. Now, I'm not advocating piracy or bootleg stuff necessarily, but you see a lot of it that's not necessarily officially licensed, but really good looking stuff. Artist interpretation, I'm all for that. But yeah, I'd have to say probably the single biggest change, like I said, merchandising and institutionalizing the whole thing is becoming too commercial.
Oh yeah, no, especially with like local artists now making stuff from their favorite fandom, they're selling it for half of what you could buy at a store, which I'm not, bashing or anything, because I'm all for,
Oh hell, I've got art prints all around me.
I'm all for
stuff.
I'm all for me. Even even my place right now. I'm all for buying artists' interpretation of like the Millennium Falcon or Philosopher's Stone or whatever.
Sure, but the artists are getting buried by these corporations that have a gang more money to push out officially licensed stuff that's better quality looking, if it isn't better made. And that's where I'm saying, that huge shift where it's going from the love of the fans making cool stuff to where there's money in those guys. We're going to start making a big deal. I mean, look at them, like Marvel Legends Black Series, which I've got every one of them right in front of me. But I'm just saying, you see that kind of stuff where you never used to. And now that's on the forefront where it went from one shift to the other, which is fine. Like I said, to some extent, I'm totally cool with it. It's just, where does that line get drawn?
Oh yeah. So basically, before I go to this, the biggest change you've seen in the con scene is like the business side. And
like I said, the merchandising and institutionalizing, just corporatizing the whole thing. Yeah, from the top down.
Same question for you, Jess. What's like the biggest huge change you've seen in almost your 20 years? Well, I mean, 17 years of cosplaying, going to cons.
I feel like the biggest thing that I've noticed really has just been population boom. I mean, like I said, going to Soccercon in that little convention center, and Soccercon is such a big, well-known con now. That contrast of it was sort of a small thing, and now it's something that a lot of people in the area go to, whether they're huge anime nerds or not. Yeah. I think that that's probably the biggest change I've noticed. But also, I'm going to say quality in terms of cosplay is another really big thing that I've noticed. Like Brian and I were both saying, when we were starting out, is sort of, pulling things from the store and
your closet or altering
it to fit your idea,
basically.
And now you'll still see that, but more often than not, you'll see just really nicely made costumes, whether they were commissioned or purchased online or made by hand. And it's, again, I think just like the accessibility of the internet and the technology and the materials that's really upped that game for everybody.
So basically the biggest change you've seen is not just like capacities for getting bigger for cons, like what Brian was saying, you had to see like a couple hundred people at a con that wasn't really well known back then, jump 30 years later or so, now you're seeing like San Diego Comic-Con, Soccercon in the thousands of people who didn't really like it, but now they see, okay, well, this is like, well, my favorite character or my favorite movie is going to be shown. I think Brian School will agree with me before I go to Kayla on this. San Diego Comic-Con has become more mainstream, where they will show a trailer for the next soap opera TV show. I'm not, saying that's a thing.
Oh no, that's pretty darn close to accurate. I don't really like the big cons. I went to BlizzCon the second year they had it too, and that's another one that's just gone way out of itself. And I would love to have had Diz's answer as far as the population growth, but see, unfortunately, that popularity has also been spurned by my answer. I would love to see that would be my next or equal answer is the population growth. But what spurned that? Accessibility, popularity, based on being able to get T-shirts, hats, this and that, or just just bombardment by that kind of stuff. But yeah, Wayne, those big mainstream ones like that have been a huge boon and a huge obstacle.
I mean, even like, before I mention this more,
like Salt Lake.
I'll ask Kayla, what's the biggest change you've seen in your 15 years of cosplaying and going to conventions?
I think in addition to everything that the others said, because I also agree with just like the population increase and like the merchandising increase, But the other thing that I noticed, and it wasn't like an overnight change, but it's kind of a gradual shift, was the way that like the focus of conventions just became a lot more spread out, in that you used to go to like an anime convention and everything was just anime. And whereas now a convention is just a convention. Like there's everything at every convention. You don't go to Soccercon expecting to just see anime. You go expecting to see you know, Marvel and DC and Harry Potter and Star Wars and just everything. And the other way around too. And like if I go to Emerald City Comic Con now and I'm seeing lots of like anime and Japanese culture there, so it kind of homogenizes the other way.
I think we can all attest to seeing that at one or two cons.
Definitely.
Oh, all of them, not just one or two. It's they're blurred. They might as well not even have a specific name attached to them anymore. You know, that's why I think
exactly. Yeah, like a convention is just a convention.
Yeah, that's all it really is. You know, realistically, they should all be just NerdCon A, NerdCon B, NerdCon B. You know, I mean, really, that's
NerdCon.
What it was. Yeah, I mean, really, I mean, that's all it really is. Or pop culture cons, which would be a more accurate description.
I know some conventions do label themselves now as like anime and pop culture or something like that.
Because you have to. You literally have to. I mean, if you want to make any kind of money or make it popular in any way, that's really what it is. Yeah, Kayla's 100% right.
And trust me, that's not like a dig either. Like that's not like a saying that it's a bad thing.
It's definitely a change thing. You're right.
Yeah, it's huge.
I remember seeing pictures.
But it does mean that like if you're into something that's maybe not as mainstream, it's kind of a double-edged sword, because like there's a little bit of everything now, and it's like. I'll be like, I'm going to cosplay this character from this anime series that maybe wasn't like super popular, and wear it to Soccercon, and maybe nobody will recognize it because it's not just an anime con anymore.
Well, you know, there are a few left, most of the East Coast, that are very genre specific, and they're like VHS Fest, Too Many Games, and a few others like the Philadelphia area and stuff like that, at the Last Drive-In and things like that, that are specifically genre specific.
KuroNekoCon actually too
is
KuroNekoCon in Spokane is also very good.
Yeah,
I remember
their focus is Japanese culture and anime. Like they're very focused on that.
But there's very few of those, but there are some left. Otherwise, any of these big ones, once they get past a certain point, all's fair and get, you know, in there.
It's like you were saying earlier, it's the money thing.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, when I did a podcast talking about how COVID changed the con scene, I was talking to the fans POV, and they probably answered that question. They said they couldn't have said it better. You know, certain cons, especially your big name brand cons, you know, if they're not making money, they're not going to come back. But if the con is making money, they're going to continue to come back. You know, that's, I mean, you know, when the people hear about a con, especially, you know, well, I mean, Dragon Con's not really a good example because that's more of a fan run con.
Yeah.
But like San Diego Comic Con, Anime Expo, New York City Comic Con, they're more
any of the fan X's,
and they're more concerned about, you know, money. Like you know, you spend money on the tickets, that's money that they can use to have the con next year. The con doesn't sell well, there's a chance they may not come back.
Yeah.
Now the last question, kind of similar to what I usually ask, you know, about advice. Starting with this, what advice would you like to give to any cosplayers who are coming on their, you know, 10-year mark of cosplaying?
I think one of the most important things to remember is the play part of cosplay. It's really easy, especially with social media and, you know, everybody looks perfect online, to go, oh man, that costume looks so incredible and so amazing, and it makes me feel really discouraged about what I'm working on right now. Like, how am I going to make this look like that? I think it's more important to have fun with your build, to have fun with your concept, and to have fun wearing it. And like I was saying earlier, making people smile. I think that's a really important thing that you should hold on to. And it's a good motivator, at least for me, to keep going.
I don't know. I couldn't agree anymore with that. Kayla, same question for you. Any advice to any to an all cosplayers who are coming up on their 10-year mark?
I would say if you have anything you've been holding back on, push yourself to do it. whether that's to try like doing something that you found intimidating, something that you maybe thought you couldn't do, like learn a new skill, but also like if you feel like, oh, I can't cosplay that character that I love because I don't look like him or her, like just do it. Like at some point you learn to stop just giving any fucks about that. And just like if you wear something that you love, the love will come through. Absolutely. You don't have to look exactly like that. You don't have to have the same body type, the same skin color. Like none of that matters if you just channel your love for that character, and you'll have more fun doing it that way.
Oh no, most definitely. Now to our oldest cosplay veteran, Ryan. Any advice? Any advice you like to give to any cosplayer who's or con goer, for example, who's coming up on their 10 years?
Other than what these two have said, which are both 100% accurate, the age thing comes up quite a bit. You know, 'cause I'm almost 50, dude. So, and I'm still learning shit every day. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, so I'm still learning stuff. I had to learn 3D printing software and stuff here fairly recently with the resin printer I just got. You know, so you're never too old to learn this stuff. You're never too old to enjoy it. And like Kayla was saying, if you put the love in, it's going to show through. So just keep doing it. I mean, you know, you don't even have to go to the cosplay end of it. You know, even just as a convention goer, as long as they're out there happening, just go and enjoy it.
Yeah.
You know, that's what it really comes down to. Because I'm with Diz on the play end of it. That gets muddled because people start seeing dollar signs. I can win money doing this. Oh my God. Get really discouraged on the other side because it doesn't look like, you know, Svetlana's stuff or mine or Bill Duran's or something like that.
I mean, Kamui cosplays. I mean,
yes. Oh, she's awesome.
Despite being well known, her cosplays, I have to, and I like the fact that she actually has guidebooks and everything, how-to books, and how to make. But
see, like with people like that, Benny does a lot more of it than she does, and she does admit to that. You know, and like Bill and Britt Duran up north and stuff. They're people like that. When you see the finished product, that's where it gets discouraging. But I'm so glad that some of these people do show the A to Z process because there's your encouragement to keep going. And if not to do it yourself, to go see it. This is where we're going. Like I said, the love for it, just keep going. Just do your thing. You know, it's awesome. And on top of everything else that they said.
Oh yeah, no,
by all means.
I 100% agree. I think, and I guess also to, I guess one more question now. Starting with Brian, any advice to new cosplayers and new con goers to this, I guess in a way, fandom hobby?
Okay, that I get asked that a lot, and at Rose City that had come up at the Ghostbusters booth. There was a kid there who was really overwhelmed because it was his first one. He was probably 8 or 9. Yeah. Oh, but it was just a lot to take in.
Especially at that age.
Yeah, you know? It's a lot.
Yeah. Little kids seeing such a big thing like RCC,
and to see some of their on-screen heroes in person, especially now with the quality of costumes being that way. You know, our Batman that we used to run around town with was a big one. You know, my Spider-Man and stuff like that. It's a shock. But what I was going to say is, if you're unsure, go to one, even if it's just for the one day. Go check it out. It may end up being a lifelong commitment. It may not be, but you're never really going to know until you do it. And it doesn't have to be even one of the big ones. Just go to a local con if you can, or even one of the big ones if you want to go see what it's all about and get your feet wet with it. And then make your determination as to which direction you want to go. Oh, I really enjoyed the artist alley end of it. So every con I'm going to go focus on that. Or I really liked seeing the costumes. I would watch the contest or something like that. But get some level of involvement. Hell, there's a lot of YouTube videos and stuff of New York City Comic Con and stuff. So expose yourself, then make a determination, because it is a lot to take in, especially if you've never been around it before. And no offense to you, Diz, or anything like that, but some of those anime people that really get into the characters, and that, which I have no problem with, is a lot to take in if you have no familiarity with it.
Yeah.
So, you know, get some level of exposure, I would say, and just go for it, you know. And if you don't like it, great. If you do, that's awesome too. You can be involved or look at it from the outside.
Can't argue with that. Yeah. Diz, same question. Any advice to newbie cosplayers or con goers?
Definitely seconding what Brian said. And also going back to what I said for veteran cosplayers too, you know, make sure that you're aware that cosplay is supposed to be fun and that you're having fun doing it. Because if you're not having fun, that's like the only way that you can do it wrong. There are a ton of ways that you can do cosplay. You can throw stuff together from your closet. You can put stuff together from the thrift store. You can commission somebody. You can order something off of eBay. Like, there's no wrong way to do cosplay unless you're not having fun. That's the only way that you're not doing it right.
Oh, yeah, no, I agree. And last but not least, before I end this, Kayla, same question. Any advice you like to give to cosplayers or con goers who are just wanted to get into this or see what it's like?
I guess don't be afraid of, for lack of a better word, failure. Like, don't not try something just because you think that it might not go well. Like, I sometimes have to think about all the like wigs that I've tried to style that just didn't work out and I had to throw them away. You know, projects that I started that just didn't look right, ended up in the trash. Like, it's okay because those are just learning experiences. And so don't be afraid to try something that's going to end up being an experience.
Yeah, that's a big hurdle.
Mm-hmm.
All the stuff we're talking about is a huge hurdle, and it's that first step into all of it. And yeah, Kayla, you're absolutely right. You know, just like
Definitely, yeah.
You're gonna mess up. I mean, like I said, you should see some of my first builds. So the mistakes are made, but it's getting past it. It's a hell of a hurdle for anything. You know, some people can't public speak. Some people can't get in front of the camera. Some people don't know how to do this or that. You can have all the tutorials in the world, but if you don't ever make that first step to even get an idea, you're dead in the water. That's why I was saying with going to a con, get some level of exposure and then go from there. Because
it's important to remember, you know, Picasso wasn't born knowing how to paint incredibly. Yaya Han was not
and it's
born.
Something I still have to. It's something I still have to work on myself too. Like, I have to convince myself that like it's okay to try something knowing that maybe it's like not going to be perfect. Like I'm very hard on myself that way, and so I'm still learning it to this day.
Oh no, definitely.
I just get pissed when it's not absolutely perfect the first time out. That just drives me crazy.
Why am I not perfect?
One thing
first time, this should be stellar. Yeah, but
one thing I may add, this may be a two-parter, because if this podcast has gone over 2 hours, this is going to be a two-part podcast. I'm not sure. I have to look at the time length. But this could be the first podcast panel that may be in 2 parts. I may just make it a 2-parter just to be on the safe side.
Sure.
So people can enjoy it.
Whatever works for you, Wayne.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I have to see. But yeah, again, Brian, Diz, and Kayla, thank you for coming on for this first segment of Cosplay Veterans. And again, I have to thank Chris, also known as Terrorizing, for giving this idea after talking about a podcast panel cosplay over the years. So again, thank you all for coming on and talk about this.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, of course. No, thank you. Again, I'm Wayne the Unknown. Thank you for listening to this Cosplay Con Talk podcast panel. As always, thanks for listening, and until next time, thank you for watching.